Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Stupid Gun Myths. I'm Mike B, coming at you from Mommy's basement today. We're going to be talking about the old, them commie guns is just a bunch of shit. Garbage, it's terrible. All them commie guns, pieces of shit. The redundant kind of whatever. For a visual aid, I've got several commie guns that are actually some of my favorite weapons. But anyway, let's go ahead and analyze this, bud. So I would have put this in the classic Fud lore playlist, but I've heard way more people than Fuds say this sort of happy horse shit. So it's just going on the list on this one. If you got a problem with that, go ahead and find a friend, a therapist, a religious leader, or whoever else gives a flying fuck, and go whine to them about that. So, all right, well, we'll move on now and get that out of the way for the analysis, kind of, right? So this is going to be anecdotal and my opinion, but it's based on my knowledge, research, and personal experiences. So yours is probably going to be different, but that's how it's going to be for the videos. This is going to be based on those things. What I'm saying is not necessarily a fact. It's my opinion based on a couple of facts. So the first point I'm going to make, and it's kind of an important disclaimer, is people who lump any group of firearms or really anything in a hobby or community into a junk category or shit, garbage talking category, and they're being serious about it, usually fall into what Paul Harrell calls the fake expert category. So there is that to consider. While I like and enjoy a lot of people in the firearm community, like Paul Harrell and Ian from Forgotten Weapons and people like that who aren't total dickheads, there's an equal number of fake experts and fuck belches who really make the community kind of look like a bunch of idiots from the outside. Generally, people, it just seems, think it's better to spout off inaccurate bullshit and be wrong, but they make it look like they know what they're saying, and they'd rather do that than admit that they don't know something and seek to learn. This happens a lot online, too. But it does happen in person. I've experienced it. So most people with the commie guns or shit are mentality are very ignorant with firearms, and generally probably there's a good chance they have little to no actual experience with what they're actually talking shit about. In my experience, fanboys of any kind really just suck ass and make any hobby or community really suck to be a part of. But it's not just the gun community and everything. So moving on, I just had to do that as a little disclaimer. So where does this myth actually stem from? It could be a trope. I think it's a myth because these, obviously, if you've seen any of my other videos, me shooting the commie junk, they're very effective firearms. I'm pretty good with them. There's nothing really wrong with them, in my opinion, from my experience. But I just kind of wanted to draw some attention to where the myth actually comes from, because there is a reason for it. So we have to go back to the good old days of the lovely Cold War to understand what is my first guess on all this shit. I can sum it up all in one word: propaganda. But I'm a super arrogant fucker who loves to hear myself talk, so I guess I'm going to have to keep talking. Anyway, during the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union did the same exact propagandistic shit. Throwing shade at the other country, their own citizens, making them believe things. Both countries made their citizens believe that everything that the other country stood for, including weapons technology, was horseshit. The U.S. assumed that the Soviet weapons were all just terrible, shitty, didn't work, jammed, really crudely made, broke, and the Soviets and communist countries thought the same exact shit about the M16 or M14. Oh, they're just all shitty weapons. So because of this, I'm located in the U.S., for those of you that can't tell from the northern Midwest accent. This is a thing that has carried over quite a bit. What's interesting about that is they all had that attitude until there were certain people that were in the military that started getting worked over something fierce in Korea and Vietnam by these commie shit weapons. But still, the general kind of attitude during the Cold War was that anything communist made was just terrible quality, horse shit and whatever. Straight up propaganda. So I think it was more like a peace of mind thing, because people thought that like a Red Dawn scenario could happen and all that shit. It made people possibly less afraid of their enemy's weaponry. I don't know what the exact reasoning was, but again, it's propaganda. Is there really ever a valid reason? It's usually during a shitty time or whatever. But So basically, this became the norm in the U.S. specifically, and has just been regurgitated by idiots and fake experts alike. And there's no end in sight for this. A lot of these myths stem from just stupid old tropes that may have some truth to them. Like, I don't know, maybe people don't like the way the AK feels, you know, next to the M14 or whatever, or the M1 Garand, and then they just assume that it's a piece of shit because, oh, it's made in a communist country, so oh, it's got to be a piece of shit, and I don't like it. I have no experience with it and all that stuff. I do implore people who believe this myth to ask how many people have been killed by commie junk in all the corners of the world in the past, like, 100 or so years. I mean, think about that. It's a pretty substantial number. If they really were that shitty, you'd think that people would have stopped using the fucking things years ago, right? But here we are today in 2020 with these types of weapons being used everywhere. There's even older weapons than communist-era weapons being used right now in current conflicts, like the Mosin-Nagant 9130 being used in Syria quite frequently. It's just really interesting, and in Ukraine and all that stuff. But yeah, the communist-era weapons from like 1917 on, they're still in use today. Can't really say that a lot about U.S. weapons being used on the scale that those old ones are. But yeah, I mean, just think about that. So yeah, just because something was made by a country that you don't like, or something like that, or you're told you don't like it, and it does not a shitty weapon make it. So get over the idealistic bullshit and pretty much grow the fuck up. That's the advice I'm going to give you for that. It's just more ignorance added to a hobby and community that's already riddled with enough ignorance, and this is totally preventable. Education is a really good tool for anybody, really. Here's the thing, too, is just because people don't agree with your choice of firearm doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just kind of the way that you go about disagreeing that really kind of makes the difference. So before you do that, and you disagree with somebody and you just say that something's a piece of shit, it'd probably be wise to be able to back up your position with actual experience. And like, not just, I fired a commie gun in SKS one time and it rocked. It dumped the magazine because the firing pin stuck because it's a piece of shit. Well, there's a reason for that, Actually have some real experience and educate yourself instead of just shitting on guns that other people like and are proficient with. It's the same sort of like the shit as the, Glock fanboys that, oh, they're the perfect fucking pistol ever made because that's literally all they've ever shot. They've refused to ever branch out from the Glock perfection. It's not just Glock fanboys. There's AR fanboys. They've never shot an AK, vice versa. It's just, I just don't like fanboys if you haven't gotten that kind of from my videos. So, it's just ignorance. It's just ignorance. And it is very prevalent, it seems, in the firearm community, and that drives me fucking nuts. It's like, I used to be guilty of spewing shit that I heard, and then kind of figured out that I need to do a little bit more research and get some more experience under my belt before I open my fucking mouth and start talking shit about things. And so, no, most, the firearms that are manufactured in commie countries weren't actually pieces of shit. Personal preference is one thing, but being a fucking ignorant dick about your preference versus someone else's gets really fucking old in this hobby. And it's the same with car guys. Oh man, you like Ford? Oh, found on the road dead. Oh, fuck you, Dodge, Chevy. It's like, good God. This fanboydom really just makes hobbies not desirable. I know a lot of people that have just gotten out of it because it's just so fucking, hoity-toity and the hell's the word I'm looking for? It's just dumb. Basically, in conclusion, with this sort of like blanket statement, you have to consider the source. And that's like that with any real blanket statement. Usually you're dealing with someone who is a fake expert who has little to no actual experience. It's a big thing. And is so fucking ignorant that they're not willing to learn or even attempt to learn or try to be actually experience this because their weak little minds are already fucking made up and there's nothing you can do or say to educate them. So that's about it. Like for the rant, it is what it is. It's try not to be somebody that says shit when you have no actual personal experience or no documentation to back it up, really. And people are going to question you a lot. But hey, a lot of people think that legitimately these are commie guns and they're all garbage. The CZ82, that's my concealed carry firearm in the summertime. That's an excellent firearm made in a communist country. I know Czechoslovakia wasn't the most communist. This is also a commie gun made in Czechoslovakia. This is Romanian, but it's an AK platform. And this is a Chinese Type 56 SKS that was sent to Albania in the 60s or 70s probably as aid. They're all really good firearms. I've made videos on most of these. I'm fairly proficient with them. Anybody can really become proficient on them. They're simple, they work. But then again, ARs are pretty simple and they work well, and so are FALs and all that stuff. Again, your preference is one thing, but you don't have to be a dick about it. Like, respect other people's preferences as long as they're proficient with it, and don't just shit talk things because it makes you look like just an idiot. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I encourage you to keep learning as much as possible from people who actually know what they're talking about. Again, consider the source. Like I mentioned earlier, like Ian from Forgotten Weapons and Paul Harrell, they're very humble. You'll notice that in their videos. They're very humble. They do their research, and if they're wrong or they mess something up, they actually kind of take responsibility for it and correct it. And that's like, people fuck up, people make mistakes, but they don't claim to be, these people that are, oh, your preference sucks. It's like, no, they like to learn. And if you just watch their videos, and you'll kind of know what I'm talking about, and get as much good experience as possible. Don't just go to some range that's got a bunch of tactical training from people who may not really know what they're doing, what they're trying to be operator as fuck. Also just be aware of where you're learning this stuff from. Good experience, 10% or 10 minutes of good experience is better than 10 hours of shitty experience. So that's kind of the rule I live by with guns and stuff like that. And then most of all, here's the thing, is enjoy being a fellow firearms enthusiast or collector. You don't have to be an ignorant fuck goof. You can just have fun and enjoy the hobby and learn. Like, again, Paul Harrell's got that fake expert video on how to spot like somebody who actually is really knowledgeable. Go watch those 2 videos. It really says a lot, and you'll be able to see these people a lot more frequently now that you'll know what to look for. And that helped me out with being able to explain how, well, maybe if this person thinks they know everything, they probably don't. Anyway, that's all I've got. Commie guns are junk. That fucking myth is wrapped up. Just using a little bit of rational common sense. I hate that term, because what is common sense? But just using a little bit of rational thought based on experience and just kind of maturity level, it seems like. Because I used to be very guilty of spewing this shit, like I said, and I learned that you look a lot more intelligent if you ask about something and you're curious about something than if you just spew off shit and claim to know about it. So, all right, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this long-winded little rant. But yeah, let me know if you got any experiences with this blanket statement and what your experiences were with that and how you countered that argument, or if you just ignored them or whatever. Because, I've heard this so many times. Like, oh, why do you got those commie guns? It's just like, fuck you, I'll ignore you. Like, it's not even worth it because they have their mind made up. All right, I'll stop ranting. If you like this video and all the other videos I make, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon. The link to that is in the description. It's $1 a month or $12 a year. So a couple decent-sized cups of coffee. And it really helps be able to fund like new firearms to make educational videos on and go out and shoot them like they would have actually been shot. Ammunition, of course, costs money. And then I do a lot of helmet videos. We do helmet ballistic tests. I eventually want to get into doing some body armor ballistic tests for military surplus. Anyway, Patreon helps with that stuff. $5 a month or more gets you into my Discord server. We got some really cool things going on there. And I do a lot of exclusive content on Patreon, etc., etc. So consider supporting the channel on there if you like the content. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you, hopefully, on the next episode of Stupid Gun Myths.